Hello again. Just to prove that Hebrew is as easy as 1, 2, 3, this time we're going to learn how to count. We'll learn everything systematically, never fear, but first, a children's rhyme to teach you the numbers from 1 to 4. Achat shtayim Yerushalayim. Shalosh arba America. Yerushalayim is Jerusalem, of course. Once more. Achat shtayim Yerushalayim. Shalosh arba America. Now you try it. Yerushalayim. America. And there you have it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Achat shtayim shalosh arba. Now, if you remember day 1 of creation, there was evening, vayhi erev, and there was morning, vayhi voker, yom echad, 1 day. Echad, 1. But I told you in our little rhyme that one was achat. How come? Because numbers have gender. Depending on what you're counting, the numbers are either masculine or feminine. 1 day is yom echad because yom is a masculine noun, but 1 year is shana achat because shana is a feminine noun. Again, yom echad, but shana achat. And the numbers from 3 through 10 work the opposite of the way you would expect. Tov is masculine and Tova is feminine, but the numbers from 3 through 10 end in A when they're masculine and are unmarked when they are feminine. Noah had 3 sons, Shlosha Vanim. Job had 3 daughters, Shalosh Banot. The A version of the number goes with the sons, and the unmarked form goes with the daughters. Shlosha vanim, but shalosh banot. On the plus side, no one's expecting you or me to do this correctly. All we have to do is read the numbers and understand them. But since these forms are the opposite of what we normally expect, I thought I had better point them out to you just to make sure you didn't think I was mixing them up. And now, here are all the numbers from 1 through 10. In the chart, you can see both the masculine forms and the feminine forms, and you can see that the masculine ones from 3 through 10 end in A. You would expect those to be the feminine forms, but they're not. They are the masculine forms. If I had to guess, these forms existed before the gender markers settled into the way we know them. Now, I've let you look at them, but we haven't counted to 10 together yet out loud. Here's what I am going to suggest. Learn to count once. Learn the feminine numbers, the unmarked forms, and do not go to sleep tonight without having memorized them. Once you've learned those 10 forms, then all the other forms, whether or not you get the grammar, you'll know how many there are of whatever it is. Once you know that chamesh is 5, then when you see chamisha or chamishim or chameshet, you'll know that you're dealing with a numeral 5 and not 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's learn them. If you want to count from 1 to 10, here's how you do it. Achat, shtayim, shalosh, arba, chamesh, shesh, sheva, shmoneh, tesha, eser. Again. Achat, shtayim, shalosh, arba, chamesh, shesh, sheva, shmoneh, tesha, eser. Now you. Yafeh, very nice. My advice, anything you need to count from now on, count it in Hebrew. I still count things in Russian, because I developed that habit learning Russian in college. And I can even count to 6 in Japanese because I used to play backgammon with a Japanese friend. So learn these numbers before you go to sleep tonight, and anything you have to count, count it in Hebrew. Once more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've seen that the numbers from 3 through 10 have an "a" ending unexpectedly in their masculine forms. We've also seen the number 1 in Yom Echad and Shana Achat. But what about the number 2? The feminine form we learned to count with is Shtayim with a taf, and that taf, which looks like it's in the middle of the word, actually comes just before the ending. Shtayim, like Mayim and Shamayim. We're going to talk about that Ayim ending before we're done today. So the taf of Shtayim is actually marking it as feminine, and that's totally normal for a feminine word to be marked with taf. Think of the feminine singular construct form, Malkat Shiva, the Queen of Sheba, Eshet Avraham, Abraham's wife. And why is there a dagesh in that taf? Can you guess? It's hiding a nun. And that is the masculine form of 2, Shnayim. Shnayim, masculine, Shtayim, feminine. At some point we have to grow up and move past 10, but first I need to point out to you that these numbers are what one grammatical text calls semi-substantival and semi-adjectival, meaning they're kind of like substantives, nouns, and kind of like adjectives. What that means for our purposes is numbers have construct forms. You don't have to worry much about the meaning. It's not that different to say that there are 3 somethings or 3 of something. But let's look at the construct forms, and specifically the masculine ones, so you're not surprised when you encounter them. The feminine forms will do what you expect an unmarked noun to do in construct. Shorten the first vowel a little bit, shlosh instead of shalosh. You'll find them in the course guidebook if you want to look at them. And 1, even in the masculine form, does the same thing. Echad in the absolute and achad in the construct. But 2, and then 3 through 10 are different enough that I want to show them to you. First, 2. Back when we were talking about how letters behave, we saw a special shape with yud in it that collapses into a vowel under certain circumstances. Ayi to a, just like Bayit, a house, but Beit HaMelech, the house of the king. That is exactly what happens to the number 2, Shnayim, Shnei. And the feminine form, which has the same shape, works exactly the same way. Shtayim, Shtei. Shnei Vanim, 2 sons. Shtei Vanot, 2 daughters. The construct forms Shnei and Shtei are actually slightly more common than the absolute form Shnayim and Shtayim. And of course, construct forms can have suffixes. Shneihem, the 2 of them. Vayu Shneihem Arumim, the 2 of them, Shneihem, were naked. Ha'adam ve'ishto, the man and his wife, and they were not embarrassed. Velo yitboshashu. Yitboshashu, hitpa'el, and it begins with yud and ends with u, so it's imperfect and third masculine plural. Masculine plural because the masculine form is the default for mixed groups too. It's imperfect because they kept on not being embarrassed all the time until they ate the fruit. And it's hitpa'el because embarrassment is something you do to yourself. We're looking at numbers in this lesson, but it's always, always in order to pause and give yourself some time to think about whatever verbs we may encounter. Don't be afraid to shut me up for a few minutes if you want some peace and quiet to think about a verb. Now, 3 through 10. If you compare the absolute and construct forms, you'll see that these words ending in a, the masculine forms this time, form their constructs in two different ways, both of them normal for nouns that end in a, even if it's not obvious why different numbers chose different patterns. First, there are the numbers that have the most common kind of construct, reverting from kamatz he to patach taf, 7, 8, and 9. Shiv'a, shiv'at, shmona, shmonat, and tish'a, tish'at. And the others, 3 through 6, have a segalit construct pattern. Shlosha, shloshet. Arba'a, arba'at. A instead of because of the ayin. Chamisha, chameshet, and shisha, sheshet. Don't be overwhelmed by the different forms. As long as you can remember how to count to 10, achat, shtayim, shalosh, arba, chamesh, shesh, sheva, shmoneh, tesha, eser, then you'll always know how many the number is. You'll get comfortable with the different forms as you encounter them in your reading. Now, let's move into our teens. Just like in English, you make the teens in Hebrew by using the numbers from 1 through 9, plus a suffix that sounds kind of like 10. But Hebrew not only has 13, 14, 15, it also has 1 teen and 2 teen. And there are masculine and feminine forms for all these numbers. Here they are. The numbers are the numbers we've already learned. The teen part is asar for masculine nouns and esrei for feminine nouns. So it's chamisha asar yom, 15 days, using the masculine form of 15, and chamesh esrei shana, 15 years, using the feminine form of 15. Notice that you don't need to make the noun plural. Same way the cowboys in the movies say 500 head of cattle, not heads of cattle. Chamesh esrei, feminine. Chamisha asar, masculine. 12 is 2 teen. Shneim asar, masculine, and shtem esrei, feminine. And 11 is 1 teen. Achad asar, masculine, and achat esrei, feminine. But just like we have a special word 11 in English, Biblical Hebrew also has a strange alternative form for achat esrei. Instead of echad, Biblical Hebrew has this alternate form only ever used in these words that mean 11, ashtei. Don't get it confused with shtei, meaning 2, or shtem esrei, meaning 12. This is ashtei with an ayin at the beginning. You are never going to see this form without teen following it, and it is always going to mean 11. But get to know it, because these forms, ashtei asar and ashtei esrei, are actually more common in the Bible than the sensible forms, achat asar and achat esrei. You won't find them in post-biblical Hebrew, but we do find matching forms in other ancient Near Eastern languages, so it must have been a thing at some point. So now we have 1 through 10, achat, shtaim, shalosh, arba, chamesh, shesh, sheva, shmoneh, tesha, eser, and 11 through 19, achat esrei, shtem esrei, shlosh esrei, arba esrei, chamesh esrei, shesh esrei, shva esrei, shmoneh esrei, and cha esrei. Next thing we have to do is to bump up the tens column. Eser and asara are 10, asara for masculine nouns, and eser for feminine ones. But beyond 19, you'll be happy to hear, there are no separate masculine and feminine forms. 20 is a little peculiar. It sounds like the plural of 10, esrim. It's one of those words that you just have to learn. But all the rest of the tens column is easy. It's just the numbers you've already learned plus the ending im. Shloshim for 30, arba'im for 40, chamishim for 50, and so on. And here they all are, the numbers from 20 through 90. Esrim, Shloshim, Arba'im, Chamishim, Shishim, Shiv'im, Shmonim, and Tish'im. You put numbers together by adding them. So Tish'im v'tesha is 99. And what comes next? 3 big numbers for the next 3 powers of 10. Me'ah, 100, construct form me'at, plural me'ot, hundreds. Elef, 1,000, same form in the construct. Segelit, plural, alafim, construct plural, alfei. And finally, rivava, 10,000, plural, rivavot. But as you can see, it is related to the adjective rav, rabbah, rabim, rabot, meaning much or many. So rivava can also just mean a huge number. Let's have a look at Jethro's advice to his son-in-law Moses in Exodus 18:21 for organizing the Israelites. He told him to appoint the following officials: Sarei alafim, Sarei me'ot, Sarei chamishim, Vesarei asarot. Think about it for a minute. Sarim are chiefs or captains or officers or some other kind of leadership words. What kind of leaders is Jethro telling Moses to appoint? Sarei alafim, captains of thousands. Sarei me'ot, captains of hundreds. Sarei chamishim, captains of 50s. Vesarei asarot, and captains of 10s. Notice it's not esrim, that means 20, but asarot, the plural of asara, a multiple number of 10s. Sarei alafim, sarei me'ot, sarei chamishim, vesarei asarot. And one more passage to get us some practice with numbers. For 10 points on the new refrigerator, who was the oldest man in the Bible? You know what the song says? Methuselah lived 900 years. But now, let's go to Genesis 5:25 through 27 and get the real facts. I've highlighted the numbers here so you don't have to prowl through the text to see them. And we're going to move quickly through everything but the numbers. Feel free to pause me if you want to stop and think about the rest of the text more carefully right now. Vayichi Metushelach, and Methuselah lived. Be careful, that's a chet, not a hey. Haya with a hey is to be, but chaya with a chet is to live. Not to reside somewhere, but to be alive. Methuselah lived. Sheva ushmonim shana ume'at shana. Sheva, 7, ushmonim, and 80, shana, years. The Hebrew word is singular, but in English we would say a phrase like this in the plural. Me'at shana, and 100 of years, a century's worth. So up to this point in his life, Methuselah had lived how long? Sheva ushmonim shana ume'at shana, 187 years. Vayoled et Lamech, and he begat Lamech, the Hifil of Yud Lamed Dalet. Verse 26, Vayechi Metushelach acharei holido et Lemech, and Methuselah lived after his begetting of Lamech. Notice that the son's name is Lemech. Lamech, our English name for him, is really the puzzle form from the end of verse 25. All right, how long did Methuselah live after begetting Lamech? 280 shana, ushva me'ot shana. 280 years and 700 of years. 280 shana, ushva me'ot shana. 782 years. Vayoled banim uvanot, and he begat sons and daughters. Verse 27, we could just add the two previous totals, but fortunately for us, the text is going to do it for us. And now we have another number to play with. Vayiyu kol yemei Metushelach, and all the days of Methuselah were Tesha v'shishim shana, ucha me'ot shana. 69 years and 900 of years. 969. And there are plenty of other long-lived characters in that chapter you can practice on. So much for the cardinal numbers, the numbers you count with. Now for the ordinal numbers, the numbers you use when you are listing things in order. First, second, third, fourth, and so on. All of them except for first are once again related to the same numbers we've been learning throughout this lesson. And here they are, from 2nd through 10th, Sheni, Shlishi, Rivi'i, Chamishi, Shishi, Shvi'i, Shmini, Chi'i, and Asiri. You can see that the aleph of the cardinal number 4, Arba, is just there to make the word easier to pronounce. The root that means 4 is Resh Bet Ayin. An ordinal number is definitely an adjective, and so there are feminine forms for these too, just add a taf. Shenit, Shlishit, Rivi'it, and so forth. That's how it works from 2 to 10. Once you get past 10th, Asiri, you just use the cardinal numbers. Not the 11th year, but the 11 year. Uvashana ha-achatesrei. Achatesrei is 11, and achatesrei is also 11th. But what about first? If you remember the first day of creation, it was Vahi Erev, Vahi Voker, Yom Echad, one day. Many Bibles do indeed translate that as the first day or a first day, but the normal word for first in Hebrew, then and now, does not come from the numerical system. It's the word rishon from rosh, meaning head. So it's not an ordinal type adjective with e and it, but a regular adjective like tov. Rishon, Rishonah, Rishonim, Rishonot. Second, third, fourth, and so on are very rare in the plural. From 6th through 10th, they don't occur in the plural at all. But Rishon does, because it has a more general meaning. The former ones as opposed to the latter, Acharon, the original one, the earlier one. But also the first one. So, Rishon, Rishonah, Rishonim, Rishonot. Notice again, whether an O vowel is spelled with a vav or not is completely arbitrary. And after Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, Rivi'i, Chamishi, Shishi, Shvi'i, Shmini, Chi'i, Asiri. Now we've learned how to count up to 10,000, which is a pretty good day's work. But Hebrew has a couple of shortcuts that reveal something essential about the language. It not only has singular and plural, but a special ending that indicates the dual, a pair of something, two of something, which is why the number 2 Shnayim and Shtayim both have that ayim ending. That is the dual ending. And there are two other numbers that have it. Me'ah, 100, Matayim, 200. And Elef, 1,000, Alpayim, 2,000. You'll also see that ending used with Yom and Shana, Yomayim, 2 days, and Shnatayim, 2 years. Not 2 individual years, but a 2-year period. Shvu'ayim, 2 weeks, occurs once in the Bible. Can you see the root for 7 Shin Bet Ayin in Shavua, the word for week? Plural, Shavuot. And there are other nouns that can take that dual ending, especially body parts. We all have bilateral symmetry, so there are lots of body parts that come in pairs. Einayim, Oznayim, Yadayim, Birkayim. If you're an animal, you might have Karnayim. And if you're a bird or an angel, you may have Knafayim, wings. I just flew in from Mitzrayim, and boy, are my arms tired. Why is Egypt called Mitzrayim? Because in ancient times, people thought of Egypt as made up of 2 different regions. Upper Egypt, the southern part closer to the mountains, and Lower Egypt, the northern part on your way down to the Mediterranean. Now, there are some ayim words that don't seem to indicate pairs, and it's a little bit mysterious why they have that ending. You know some of them already. For example, mayim, water, and shamayim, sky. But generally that ending seems to have been a way to indicate precisely 2 of something. I want to look at 2 more examples of it before we're done, because both of them occur in words that are also used for counting. They're not numbers, but words that are used to count the number of times something happens. The first is the counterpart of yad, which means your hand or your arm. It's regel, your foot or your leg. Legs come in pairs, so there's a dual form of this word, raglayim. Notice that it's a segulate noun that reverts to its original form when you add an ending. But the rhythm of stepping, step after step, seems to have made this a word for counting occurrences. That would not be dual, raglayim, but plural, regalim, the standard form of a segulate plural. You will find this word regel in both meanings in Numbers 22, as a leg or foot, and also for counting something. That's your challenge for this lesson, besides learning your numbers and practicing them. I'll remind you that Genesis 5 is a great chapter to do that. And I have to point out that when the Israelites are commanded to observe 3 pilgrimage festivals, they are Shalosh Regalim, 3 occurrences. Notice that it's feminine Shalosh, not masculine Shlosha, because regel, like most body parts that come in pairs, is a feminine noun. Now, regel is much more commonly used to refer to your actual body than as a counting word, but there's another rhythm word that works the opposite way. It's regularly used for counting times, but once in a while it too can refer to your foot or to stepping. It is the word pa'am, a time. Not time like what time is it or how much time do you have, but how many times did it happen. Once, pa'am achat. Pa'am is feminine. Shlosha pe'amim, 3 times. Notice that pa'am is also a segulate noun with patachs instead of segols because of the ayin, but its plural works the segulate way. Pa'am pe'amim, like melech melachim. Or did it happen pa'amayim? Pa'am with that ayim dual ending. Make sure you can recognize that ending when you need to. Well, we learned a lot of numbers today, potentially an infinite number of them, and we're now halfway through our course. We're about to start a solid series of lessons on verbs. So this is definitely a good time to go back and review our previous lessons to make sure you've got a solid base of support to move ahead. But it's also a good time to remind yourself of what an amazing amount you've already learned. So let's just remember what happened on Yom HaShishi, the 6th day of creation. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, v'hinei tov me'od. God saw all that he had done, and behold, it was very good. Congratulations, and I'll see you next time.